There are many hands that are visible in the overall painting of Times Square. To get really close, if let's just say we're going to do an image of just a hand, we're going to look way up here at this billboard, because there we're getting real close on a hand. So I got a close-up here of it, and we can see that the fingernails are very detailed. That's what we're going to create in this particular movie is a fingernail. Let's pull back a little bit again so we can just see the overall hand. Let's create that fingernail. So since we don't have anything to start with, I'm going to have to go in there and create some shapes. So this is going to be our thumb right here. This is the edge of the thumb, and it goes in a bit like that and comes down and around like so. And it comes over to here. And here's this little lump around it. Then it comes over here and it goes around to the tip of the thumb like that. All right. So we can always refine this after the fact. So we'll just go in there and do that. We'll just kind of curve it out a little bit. And there's our basic thumb. And on this thumb, there'll be a fingernail. So I'm going to go in here and draw my fingernail. So here's the shape. It goes around, goes in here, goes around the edge of the thumb, comes around and goes out here and closes it off. Now, once again, I'm going to go in there and modify it after the fact to get it just the way I want it. So I want this thumb to kind of appear like that and soften these areas, make them a little more round. And there we have the basic shape for the thumbnail. Now we're going to go in here and render these. So I'll pick a color for my flesh tone. And just go in here and pick kind of a color that looks kind of fleshy like that. That looks good. I'll select this path that makes up the thumb. And let's go in there and save those paths. And we'll create a layer. And we'll call that layer the thumb. And I'll fill that path right there with that color. Then this will be the fingernail. So I'll create a layer and we'll call it nail. And we'll pick a different color. More in the pink vein like that and a little lighter. A lot of the tones will be added after the fact. And in that layer, we'll go ahead and take that path and fill it. So now we don't need the paths anymore. There they are. We have our basic shapes that are going to be the thumb and thumbnail. So now it helps to study reality. You have a hand right there. You can look at your hands to see how that thumb is structured and so on. Some thumbs are different than others. The shapes of hands are different. But if you want a nice, lean, simple hand, just look through any fashion magazine. You'll see all kinds of pictures of hands and you'll see how they are structured. So now I'm going to go in here and start adding some tones to this to give it a little dimension. On the thumb itself, let's go to that layer. I'm going to get my burn tool and I'm going to make a nice large size here. And I've got the exposure down to about 20%. I'm going to just kind of darken some of these tones right in here. I'm going to set it to mid-tones now, so it's going to warm them up a little bit. And I'm just going to add some tones right through here. So it's just giving it a little dimension, and a little bit of tone through there, and a little bit of tone right here at the edge where the nail is being formed. And I'll go right along the edge of the nail, just like so. Then I'm going to make it a really small brush and just add a couple of little lines here. These are little lines that you would normally see on the thumb. Let's undo that last one. And you see these little lines right there. And maybe add a couple of little tones right in there. Now I'm going to do a highlight with a really small brush about the same size. I'm going to just throw a little highlight right along the top part of these lines here, just to give them a little dimension. Now, after they're done, I'm going to go in there with my finger tool. And I'm going to make it larger. And I just kind of push these around just so that they blend into each other a little better. So I'm just getting that little tone. So there we see that we have these little lines on the thumb. Now what I can add is a little texture at this point. Since we're so close, we could go in there and just give it a filter. We'll give it one of the texturizer filters. So we'll go in there and just to add a little texture. The scaling's way down. We'll bring the relief down a little bit. And click OK. And now we just have a little tiny bit of a texture. Now comes the nail. So we have our fingernail there. So what I'm going to do is create a layer right above it, right here. And this is going to be the texture of our nail. I'm going to fill it with that same color that we had before, that same pink, right? And I'm going to go in here and switch to a black and white. And right in here, I'm going to give it a filter of render fibers. Because if we look at the fingernails, it's got all these little ridges in it. So I'm going to bring up the variance so I get really strong little ridges. Bring down the strength, or maybe increase the strength. There we see we're getting all these nice little ridges. I'm going to click OK, and I got all these little lines, which I'm going to stretch out a bit. So I'm going to go in there and give it a little motion blur. Straight up and down, I increase the distance there so I get all these nice little streaks like that. Click OK, deselect it. I'm going to put that layer in multiply mode. And then bring down the opacity considerably so I just get this little hint of these little lines, just like that. Then I'm going to go in there and I'm going to clip it. Holding down my Option key, Alt on a PC, I'm going to click right there on the nail, which I'm now going to warp it. So it takes the shape of our nail. I'm going to warp it. I'm going to grab the 4 handles and make them parallel to the shape of our nail, just like that. Then I'm going to take these handles and bring them in. Bring this one up. Bring this one up. Bring this one over. So you can see that I'm restoring their directions the way they should be, but now they're following the shape of our nail. I'm going to curve these that way so that they follow, again, the shape of our nail. Bring this in. Bring this out just a little. And there we have that. We're now starting to get this nice curvature to our little pattern. And I'm going to straighten these out. So we're starting to get that little bit of a curve just like that. And there we start to have the little texture on the nail. Now, if you look at your nails, there's some light colored tips. Like there's this white section right in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and just create that white section. I'm going to create a little oval right inside here, like so. Close it off, and I could always modify it after I've done it. So I want to just bring this in about like that. That looks good, and just straighten this guy out. And right below this texture here, I'm going to create a layer. So I'm holding down my Command key, Control on PC, so I created a new layer underneath, and we'll call this white area. And I'm going to fill it with that white right there. We got a white. So I'm going to take that path and fill it. Now, it's a little stark right now, no problem. Let's save that path. Remember that everything gets modified after the fact. And also, the tip of the nail. So I'm going to go in here and just kind of follow this edge, just about like that. Now, this could be a French manicure or whatever, but I'm just going to get a little white tip along this edge here. So I'm going to go in there and just straighten this out a little bit more, maybe add a little more to it, about like that. That looks good. Save that path. And we're going to call this the tip of the nail. Again, right above the white area, we'll just create a new layer and we'll call it tip. And fill that with the white. So now we have all these tones in place. So now I'm going to go in here and start to play with them. So I'm going to go to my layers and I'm going to take the white area, which I'm going to blur. I'm going to give it a little Gaussian blur just to soften that up. Soften it up about like that. That looks good. And I'm going to bring down the opacity for it, because I don't want it so strong. I just want it to be a little hint of a white tone in there. For the tip, I'm going to go in there and do that same blur. So I give it a Gaussian blur, and this one I'll make it a little sharper. I don't want it to be so soft. About like that. And that one we're going to leave nice and strong. Now, our texture. Our texture is a little too strong and too predominant. Let's bring down the opacity just a little more, about like that. And I'm also going to give it a mask, because now in the mask, I'm going to eliminate certain sections that I don't want. So I got a nice big brush here. Make it really big. Set the 20% and black. So I'm going to start hiding. And I'm just going to very lightly dab in certain areas just to lighten up that texture. Just like that. So now it's not so predominant. It's just little hints of that texture in different places. Now to the nail itself, I'm going to do a little lightening and darkening there. I'm going to take my Dodge tool. I'm just going to give it a little lightening right in this area here, just to lighten that up a little bit. Then I'll take my burn tool and make it a little larger. I'm going to just darken right along here and right along this whole side here. And let's pull back a little bit here and get a much bigger brush. I'm just going to darken this whole side here so that the nail starts to become a little darkened. And there you start to get the feel of the nail. I'm going to come in here and darken this edge right here. Just darken this little area right in here where the nail is coming out of the skin. And there you see that we have this very realistic looking kind of a fingernail.